talk about bass.
Okay, let's talk about bass. Let's talk about bass design. Admittedly, I'm not like the best bass guy, but I wanted to get you guys to sort of think about a little bit, sort of thinking outside the box for bass design. So say we have like a, whatever, bass sound or whatever. And then if we want to make it all bassy, we'd probably saturate it. We'd probably put OTT on it, for example. We'd probably have some moving filters or chorus or something. I don't know, some stuff like this. Right? Maybe amp. Maybe we'd have vocoder on it or something. We could use the modulator to get some nice changes to the sound, right? These are all some kind of standard bass tricks. I'm not going to go too into that because, again, that's not really my area of expertise. But the point of all that was sort of to say, can you make a bass out of any sound? Or like, what are the fundamentals of bass, and how can we use those things in a kind of broader context? So say we have the amen loop. What kind of stuff would we want to put on, or would we put on it in order to make a bass out of it? So for example, one way to get like a resonant tone out of something like this, let's throw OTT in there right off the bat. So and we're getting kind of a pure sine tone. We could also, we could also make this it's not all the way there yet, but you can hear the bass coming up a bit. So that might be one way to get the sine tone, sort of the starting block. Another way might be with the EQ8, because you can get kind of double the scale. So now we're really getting a sine tone that sticks around. What if we were to attach that to a macro, right? And what if we were to, filter out some of the... Okay, so now we have this bass at like 50 hertz. What if we copy paste this a bit and we get we might also want to just get rid of these for a sec. Let's say maybe we don't want to have that going all the time, so we might map that. Let's say 0 to 15 dB. Let me duplicate those again. Right, so now we have this thing that's kind of making a bass for us. We could also potentially say, like, map this to this gain knob, but just reverse it so we get something sort of like this, like right? And then we can effectively turn anything into a bass. Now from here, what can we do, right? We have a pure sine tone, so we can one of the things that you could do is, like, if you want it to move a little bit, you can get a little bit of movement like this by having a node that's close by. I'm gonna forget about that for now. So let's kind of just talk about like what kind of things we might want to have in here and what kind of things we might want to modulate in here as well. The other thing is like, so this is super loud going into this saturator, so it's kind of by default on full. You might want to throw a limiter in there, and then you have a little bit more. Gives you a little bit more control over that. We could also make it mono, for example. That seems to be important. Or make the bass mono or whatever. And then from there, what kind of places can we go, right? Let's bring that in. I'm just going to mess around a little bit, and then we'll sort of see where we go. So yeah, so those are some options so that you can change the wave shape a little bit.
If I haven't put you to sleep by now, the whole point of this section is to think about how can we turn one sound into another? What is the core element of one sound, and how do we get to that in-between sound and then get to the destination sound? Or you can think about turning things into things directly. One of the common things that I'll suggest for my students to do when they're practicing sound design is try to take any sound and turn it into a kick, or take any sound and turn it into hi-hats. How would you go about doing that? What effects would you use? It's a good way to get really into your effects and really understand how they work and what they do.
And then one of the things that I would maybe do on the end of this is just to get a little bit more control over it. We could, for example, put a gate that sidechains to the pre-effects. So that way, it will cut our signal when we're done playing with it. Like when we're not sending signal in here. Right, which is kind of handy so that it's not always playing. From there, some of the things we might try are like, this is something that Glorklunk showed me. So we're finding lots of interesting modulation places. Or maybe you want to put that before all this stuff. I don't know. Maybe you want to make it a bit wider in the high end or something. getting some kind of interesting movement out of that. What other stuff could we do? Maybe some dynamic tube. I don't know. So this is where it gets kind of like really opens up the door for experimentation. I would also say that like maybe some ping pong delay might give you some nice things to play around with. This guy I'll usually map to a macro, so I get a much kind of finer control. Let's say like 70. You might want to have control over this stuff too. Or you might want to put this earlier in your chain, for example. And then, of course, just like you would with any other sub, you might want to layer a sub-layer underneath all this shit. So let's just do that here. We could do, for example, something like this. Oops. That might be a bit weird, but yeah, so, and then playing with the levels of those things. Again, you might want to put that limiter before all this shit. Here. And then let's make it mono, just on the sub channel. And then the final step of the puzzle, I think, is like how do you make sure that you fade in from this? Which like you could, I mean, obviously another option for fading into it, which is sort of the easiest option, would be just to set up a dry wet type situation. So maybe something like this. This guy back, and then we could just call this our dry wet. Right? So that's kind of our potential end place. But the idea with this isn't really to like show particular bass sound design techniques. It's more just to get an idea of like thinking outside the box. Like if you can turn any sound into a bass, you most likely can turn any sound into any other sound. So I think those things are worth exploring and worth kind of digging into. And for sure there's probably some more VSTs that like external effects that would give you even better sounds. And those are all worth looking into.
Thank you for joining me for this tutorial about sound design or bass or whatever that was about. I've just recently started a Patreon account at patreon.com/Woulg. And if you're able to support me in any way, it really, really helps me out. I'll be able to make more tutorial videos, more Max for Live devices, maybe hire some videographers or photographers for gigs if this stuff ever ends. Anyways, so since it's the first one, I'd like to thank my early subscribers by name, and they are Brocco Fancone, Il Gates, Maxime Leduc, Nick Chavez, Josh Vishnu, Matt McNall, Brian, Meow, JR, Oliver Plock, Clinch, Mike Cooper, Nacho, May, and Justin Bieber. Thank you so much to all of you. It really means a lot to me. See you next time. Yeah!